Hello, everyone. We're going to start our new book. It is called Wayside School Beneath the Cloud of Doom. And this is what it looks like. Just a couple of reminders. Wayside School is 30 classrooms, but not built this way. They're built this way. So this book is about the class on the 30th story. There is no 19th story because the person who built the school forgot. So the teacher that is on that story does not exist. Mrs. Zarves, if you remember from the first book, a boy was asked to go deliver a note to that teacher, but he could never get there because there was no 19th story, which meant there was no Mrs. Zarves. And in the book, there is usually no 19th chapter. This book has 30 chapters for the 30 stories. It is about Mrs. Jules's class and has a lot of similar characters. Rondi, Kathy, who hates everything, Lewis, who is the yard teacher, who the author bases that character off of himself. So I'm going to read, and let's start with the first chapter. I'm going to take off my nice cover here. Don't want to ruin that. It says, "For Ruth," that is the dedication. All right. I actually really enjoyed this book. So the first chapter is called "The Bells of Wayside." Okay. It is very important that the children at Wayside School know the bell system. The first bell in the morning sounds like this. Whoop, 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 whoop. When they hear it, they know they have 16 minutes to get to class. That's not too difficult for those in Mr. Hargrove's class on the 3rd floor. Because remember, there's 30 floors. But Wayside School is a 30-story building with one room on each floor. So for those who happen to be in Mrs. Jules's class way on the top floor, they must be ready on first whoop. Todd was in Mrs. Jules's class. He was stuck behind a mass of kids outside the building waiting for the doors to open. He jumped up and down, trying to see over the heads of those in front of him. If he was late, Mrs. Jules would put his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The kids who went to class on the lower floors often dilly-dallied. If Todd got stuck behind a large group of dilly-dalliers, he'd have no chance. Inside the principal's office, Mr. Kidswater sat behind his enormous desk as he watched the clock. At the moment the second hand reached the number 12, he shrieked into his microphone, "Whoop, whoop, 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 whoop." So it's not really a bell, it's the principal making the noise. The door unlocked. The children stampeded into the building and up the stairs. Todd tried his best to weave his way to the front, but there wasn't a lot of room. 8 minutes later, Mr. Kidswater tugged on the rope hanging through the hole in the ceiling. And the second bell rang. Clang, 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 clang. Todd counted the clangs. 8. That meant he now had 8 minutes to get to class. 7 or 9 clangs would have meant something completely different. 7 meant a helicopter was landing on the roof. 9 clangs meant a porcupine had entered the building. So far, he had only made it to the 7th floor, but he had finally managed to weave his way past the dilly-dalliers. There was nothing to slow him down now. When he reached the 18th floor, he heard the sound cha-ching, ching-a-ling, ching-a-ling. Nothing to worry about there. That just meant there were donuts in the teacher's lounge. Sounds good. The scary bell was the late bell. It didn't matter where he was. It always sounded like an angry driver was slamming on a car horn right behind him. It made Todd jump every time. He quickly dashed from the 18th to the 20th floor. There was no 19th floor. His legs were sore. He was breathing hard and had reached the top. Just ahead, he could see Joy entering the classroom. "Don't shut the..." Todd shouted. Joy shut the door behind her. "Guzak," said Todd. He was opening it when the horn blared as if right behind him. "You're late, Todd," said Mrs. Jules as he entered the classroom. "Write your—" "I know," he said. He wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Other bells rang throughout the day. At noon, the bell kaboinked 3 times. 3 kaboinks meant macaroons and cheese. Not macaroni, macaroons. The bell for recess was just a single ding, but nobody ever missed it. At the end of each day, Mr. Kidwater would bang a giant gong with a large iron mallet. It was his favorite thing about being principal. Todd sat at his desk glumly looking at the blackboard. The day had started off badly for him and had only gotten worse. There was now a check mark next to his name under the word discipline. Next to that, Mrs. Jules kept adding new homework assignments. Read a book, write a book report, draw a picture, don't forget your paperclip. History, read pages 55 to 59 and answer questions on pages 61 and 62. Math worksheet, do even and odd numbered problems. That's all of them. Science, read pages 29 to 34 and do experiment on page 37. Todd had a sick feeling in his stomach, and it wasn't just the mac and cheese. In big letters across the top of the blackboard, Mrs. Jules had written, "Ultimate test starts tomorrow." Mrs. Jules had been warning the class about the ultimate test all year. The test would last for 3 days. If he failed, Todd would be sent back to kindergarten. And then he heard it. The most magical bell of all. Ping pong. This bell had only rung once in the history of Wayside School, and nobody knew who rang it, but everyone knew what it meant. All around, kids began cheering and clapping their hands. Shouts of joy could be heard coming from every floor of Wayside School. Todd just sat there in stunned belief. It rang again. Ping pong. It was the erase the blackboard bell. Mrs. Jules has no choice. She picked up the eraser. Up and down Wayside School, teachers were doing the same thing. Todd smiled as the homework assignments were wiped away. The ultimate test was canceled. His name was removed from the discipline list, and even the word discipline soon disappeared. Deep in the basement, a man with a black mustache snapped open a black attaché case. Another man, also with a black mustache, placed a small silver ball into the case. A third man, who was bald, put a solid gold ping pong paddle. And that is the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 looks gross. Has a foot. We'll go back to that. Thanks for listening.